Good evening, and if you're just joining us, you are listening live to United Public Radio Network. I am your host, Lorilei Potvin, and you're listening to The Angel Rock. A little bit about myself if you've never been here before. I'm a Canadian clairvoyant medium, a crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner, a spiritual teacher and mentor, and I'm also a registered nurse. And if you've never been to my show before, welcome, including those that are returning guests. We always have our returning little family here, and I appreciate all of your support. My show, I cover all aspects. I don't know if I like the paranormal or the supernatural, but we'll say the very fascinating and unusual. And it can be anything from UFOs to astral travel, you name it. But the people that I have on are from all walks of life, and through their activities, whether professionally or extracurricularly, they're making a positive change for humanity. And my guest this evening is no different. He is a Canadian like myself. I should remind you too that you're listening live to this out of New Orleans, Louisiana. And he used to be a lawyer, as I like to sometimes say, in his muggle life, if a Harry Potter reference. But through some very fascinating encounters, he is where he is now, where he's an author, he is a healer. I believe he's a teacher. I've watched some of his presentations, and I'm going to let him tell you a little bit more about himself. It's Garnet Schulhauser. Welcome, Garnet.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here. I'm looking forward to the show.
So am I, because my goodness, I was telling you before the show, and I'll give my partner show a plug, Dell from The Delicious Recipe. No, it's not a cooking show. Most of you know him. We've done shows together. He usually pops in to make a little hello. Anyways, he listens to a lot of fascinating interviews, as I do too. And he happened to be listening to an interview with Garnet. And I was in the room next. We have like an open concept. And I think I was doing some resin work. Most of you know I'm creating many resin pieces. Going to be opening a shop very soon. And I started listening to this interview and I went, holy crap, this is interesting. I got to hear this. So I stopped and I sat down. And as I listened to your story, Garnet, I got to get a hold of this gentleman. I hope he'll agree to be on the show. And lo and behold, when you have so many people on your friends list, as I'm sure you do too, you meet people in the same field. And for whatever reason, you were on my friends list. So I was just telling you before the show, I think you were meant to be on here. So, you know what, let's start at the beginning, because this, everybody has this very unique, fascinating story about how we've ended up on these paths that we're on. So, you were a lawyer in your regular life, and then how did you end up doing what you're doing now?
Well, it's sort of an amazing story. I was still practicing law in Calgary, in Alberta, in Canada. And I was a corporate lawyer, and I ended up practicing for a total of like 34 years. So I was in a large law firm in Calgary.
Right.
And one afternoon, I decided to take a stroll on the street just to get a breath of fresh air. It was like a sunny day in May. So I'm strolling down the street, and all of a sudden, seemingly out of nowhere, a homeless man jumps in front of me, and stops me in my tracks. And he looked like a typical homeless man. He had long, stringy hair, scraggly beard, dirty, slept-in clothes. And, I had seen lots of these people on the street before because they're usually panhandling for money. But I didn't go around him as I usually would with these people because he had these amazing, sparkling, dazzling blue eyes. They shone like two little blue stars. I've never seen eyes like that before. And he was looking at me, and I felt like he was looking right deep within me, right down to the depths of my soul. I sensed that he knew everything about me, everything I'd ever said or done.
Wow.
Life, which was strange because I never met this man before, never laid eyes on him before. But I didn't feel violated because at the same time, his gaze was sending me this wave, this gush of pure, unconditional love. And I was feeling my whole body with an amazing sense of peace, security, and well-being. I'd never felt so wonderful before in my life. Like, it was just hard to describe. It's just like I stood there like a deer caught in the headlights, basking in love this man was sending me. And then I don't know how long I stood there. It was like a time warp. And then after he eventually broke the spell by saying to me, "Why are you here?" And he promptly disappeared into a nearby store. Well, when I finally snapped out of my reverie, collected my wits, I thought, I got to go find this guy. Like, I need to know who he was.
Like, who is this guy?
Exactly. Who is this guy? So I went into the store that he went into, looked around. He was nowhere to be seen. So I walked out into the street and I walked up and down for several blocks hoping to find him, but he disappeared into thin air. So that night I resolved I was going to go back the next day to try to find him.
Okay.
So next day, same street, same time of day, I started looking for him, walking up and down that same street. I was about to give up hope when I spotted him sitting all alone on a bench. So I walked up to him and I said, "Who are you? And why did you stop me the other day?" And he said, "I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to answer your questions and help you on your journey." Well, then my skeptical lawyer brain kicked in. Once you have a lawyer brain, you can't get rid of it.
That's why I said muggles. I don't usually, but it's just, you're just so far apart from a lawyer to where you are now.
Yeah. So my lawyer brain kicked in and I said to him, "Why do you think you can help me when you can't even help yourself? Because It looks like you've been sleeping on the street for weeks and you smell like a dead fish." Well, he just cracked a big smile and he said, "Looks can be deceiving because you look like you're a very successful corporate lawyer with everything under control, but we both know that's just a facade." He said, "You know what? If you want to, turn around and go back to your office and see if you can find the answers to all those big questions you've been asking yourself these years. See if you can find those answers on all those emails from your clients on your computer. Sit down and have a chat with me." Well, luckily my intuition was screaming at me that I had to sit down and talk to this guy.
He sounds like he didn't leave your brain from the second you met him.
So I sat down and started talking to him, and he told me his name was Albert, and he was one of my spirit guides in disguise. And so that was the beginning of a conversation, a dialogue that we had.
Okay, I got to ask you one question though. What did you think when he said spirit guide? Like, had you heard that term before? Like, did you know what that was, or?
I didn't even know what spirit guides were. I certainly didn't know that I had any. And so I just thought, well, okay, I'll explore, talk to this guy and find out what's going on. Yeah, find out what's going on. So he basically, it was a Q&A. I would ask him questions and he would answer it. And all the big questions in life, like who am I? Why am I here? What's my life purpose? And what happens to me when I die? I was raised as a Roman Catholic. I know what the church told me was that, God put you here for reasons known only to God. There's a bunch of rules you have to follow. And if you don't follow those rules, when you die, you'll go to an awful place called hell. And if you follow the rules, you go to heaven. And that was sort of it. And I had rejected that sort of a long time ago. And I was no longer a practicing Catholic. So I was always searching for these answers. And then Albert came into my life and they were all answered. And so this dialogue went on, as I say, for several months. Early on, he said to me, "By the way, I'm not just here to satisfy your curiosity. I want you to write a book about what I've revealed to you so that everyone, the whole world, can have access to it." Which sort of set me back because I had not even dreamed of writing a book. I mean, I was a lawyer and I would have been too busy.
Never mind a topic like this.
Pardon me?
Never mind a topic like this.
Yeah. So it was interesting that I found out later that I was the only one who could see him.
Oh, wow.
Man. So he had manifested himself just for me. I could see him. I could touch him. I had reached out and touched him. He felt real to me. He said that no one else could have seen him. So if somebody had been walking by the bench that day, they would have seen me sitting by myself, talking to myself. See Albert. So that was quite interesting. And when I asked him later, "Why did you show up in my life?" Because he only showed up as a homeless man for the first 3 times.
Okay.
After that, he was just a voice in my head. We communicated by telepathy. So he no longer needed to manifest. And I asked him, "Why did you manifest as a homeless man?" He said, "It was his way of easing me into the conversation. Because had he just started talking to me as a voice in my head, out of the blue, I probably would have thought I was losing my mind. Like, what is this? going on here? So once I could identify his voice with the homeless man that I encountered, then I was already quite comfortable. And so that was the first encounter with Albert. I was reluctant to write the book that he wanted me to write, but he's very gently persuasive, and eventually I did write it. And about a year after I first met Albert, I retired from law because it didn't seem to make any sense to me anymore. And so then I got busy writing the manuscript for my first book, Dancing on a Stamp. And then once I had written it, I was a bit concerned about publishing it because I knew that, like to my former partners and colleagues and clients, I was very straight-laced, sort of stuffed shirt.
You're answering my question I was going to ask you, because that was one of them, was like, how was this received by your former colleagues? Like you said, your clients and things.
Well, and that was my concern, because I thought that because of what I published, that a lot of them would think that I had gone senile early in my life. I was reluctant. So anyway, I debated that for a while, and then finally I said to myself, I just have to get this published, to hell with it, And I have lost some of those people. There's some of those former people don't talk to me. They don't say to my face, they think I'm crazy, but I know they're thinking that. But in any event, I was prepared for that. The good news is that I've met a lot of very spiritually enlightened people.
Yes.
And so the overall, the benefit has been very, very positive. A huge transformation for me from where I was as a type A personality lawyer under stress to being where I am now, which is Albert's messenger. So it was a great transformation. And so that, as I said, that led to my first book, Dancing on a Stamp. And then after I finished that, he came back into my life in a very different way. I was sound asleep in my bed. Something made me wake up. I woke up, I sat up, and I could see this ghost-like ethereal figure standing in the doorway. So when it moved closer to me, I could see it was Albert, but now he was in astral form. So I said, Albert, hi, Albert, what brings you here? He says, I'm coming to take you on a series of astral trips, out-of-body adventures. I'm going to take you to various places, in the universe, different planets, onto the spirit side, because I want you to write about what you see and hear in your next books. And I'm thinking, next books? He said, yeah, you're not done. You got to write another 3 or 4 books.
You just told me the one book.
Yeah, that's how he lured me in by saying you have to write one book. And
well, he knows you better than you almost know yourself, right?
No doubt about it. Yeah, no doubt about it. So anyway, he then just sort of reached out, grabbed my astral hand, pulled my astral body out of my physical body. I turned around and looked, and my physical body was still sound asleep in bed.
Wow.
Now I'm in astral form. He said, come with me. So he took me by the hand. We rose up through the ceiling, up through the clouds, and we ended up, our first stop was on the spirit side.
Wow.
And there we ended up in a very beautiful meadow, like beautiful green grass, wildflowers in 1,000 different colors, majestic trees. And it was just an amazing sort of a meadow that you wouldn't mind.
Now, did you find the colors? Like there's no words in our language to explain the colors, is there? Like our colors pale in comparison, right? Sorry, I had to stop you there.
You couldn't possibly describe the colors that I saw in words. You don't have words for it. So then we're walking through this beautiful meadow and on a stone path, and there's a small hill. We go up the small hill. The top of the hill, I could see a group of people at the bottom of the hill. As we walked down towards them, my heart skipped a beat because I recognized who they were. They were my mother, father, brother, grandparents, other people who had passed away.
Oh, I love it.
They were there to welcome me. So they welcomed me with open arms, smothered me in unconditional love, and they said, "This is a preview of what your
gift, Garnet.
Sorry?
What a gift you just received. Oh my God. I'm getting goosebumps. Sorry. I'm listening so intently here. You just got me like, oh, what a gift.
So the interesting part was that I had a bit of a concern with encountering my mother, who I love dearly, but she was a very staunch, religious Roman Catholic. And I knew in my first book, Dancing on a Stamp, that I had kind of dumped on the Catholic Church. And I thought, oh my God, what is she going to think? But she allayed my fear. She said, if I was still living on earth, I would be upset with you because of what you wrote. But now that I'm here, I see the big picture. I can see the big picture, and what you did was great. So keep up the good work. So that was really nice. I mean, it just reaffirmed what Elwood had told me in our dialogue, was that everyone goes back to the spirit side. So all the loved ones that you miss, you will be reunited with them again. And that just reaffirmed it all, because there they were. And it was just a wonderful reunion. And then from there, he took me into this beautiful white city that he called Aglaya. And built themselves like white, sparkling white, like incredibly beautiful, like all different sizes and shapes. And we walked down the main boulevard. And there were a bunch of souls dressed in all kinds of different garments, different, I'd call costumes, from different eras. And I said to Albert, what's this all about? And he said, well, souls in the spirit side can appear to others in any form that they like, and they can change it as often as they like. So he says a lot of these souls are dressed in garments from a prior life that they particularly enjoyed. So it could have been from 500 years ago or 200 years ago, or wherever, all the different countries. So it was like amazing. From there, he took me into this big, majestic building called the Hall of Wisdom. That's what he called it.
Yes.
Inside there, in this big room, was a committee of 11 souls. They looked like they were wise souls, like gray hair, snow white hair, smooth skin, that kind of thing. He said, this is the Council of Wise Ones, and their job is to oversee all the incarnations on our planet. And so when people are preparing a life plan to incarnate on Earth, it'll be reviewed by one of these council members, and they review it to make sure that you're not setting out too many harsh challenges.
Piling it all on like a big plate, like, because we're in our true form, right? But you don't think about, I have to live this.
When you're in the spirit, you don't quite appreciate all the aspects of a life on Earth. And so some people will plan too many challenges because they want to evolve in a rush. Others will plan a cushy life where they won't really learn anything. So the council will sort of review the plan and give some advice. But ultimately, every soul has the right to choose what they want in their life plan. So, but the other thing the council told me was they had a message for me to take back to humanity. And they said that humanity, our current civilization on Earth, is at a crucial crossroads, that we have developed very advanced technology, but our emotional and spiritual intelligence has not kept pace. And as a result of that, too many of our people let their negative emotions like fear, anger, hate, greed run their lives, get out of control. That's why we have wars and genocide and crime and mass shootings and the whole trick. And because we have weapons of mass destruction, we could basically destroy all life on our planet if we unleashed them all. So they said it's very crucial for us to get past this crossroads and move on up the spiritual ladder so that we don't destroy ourselves. And they said they've watched other civilizations on our planet, human civilizations, rise up to great heights and then crash and burn for various reasons, like Atlantis, Lemuria. There's even a number of others we haven't even discovered yet. And so, so they're very concerned that we didn't end up with the same fate.
Can I ask you one thing quickly there? Because I'm so glad you brought that up, because my partner Del and I have many interesting conversations, and our belief is that this civilization we're in right now, there's been many before, and I think you've just confirmed that for me, haven't you? So unless we learn from our prior mistakes, we're destined to keep repeating the same mistakes over and over. So these books that you've written are powerful documents, and that a lot of people need to be reading, I believe.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. And that's exactly what the council was trying to, the message they were giving me was that we need to make sure that everyone should do their part to try to curtail negative emotions, violent acts, and embrace love and compassion. And that's the way we can get to a better place on our planet. And it's not easy. It's going to be difficult, but we have to start one person at a time. Start with yourself, then deal with your family members, your friends, your neighbors, co-workers, and hopefully there'll be a positive ripple effect of the positive energy across our world. And that's what we really have to do. So it was a warning. And what they did say was they've been recruiting lots of very advanced souls, some of whom are incarnated on Earth before, some who have been here, to try to get them to incarnate on Earth and to lead by positive examples, to have positive energy affect others, sort of beacons of light that we can follow in the darkness. And so that's what they were doing. And they said, thank you for being with Albert. You're one of his messengers. He's got other messengers, and we're trying our best to spread the message through all kinds of channels, like radio hosts like yourself, Laura, people who write books, people who speak at conferences.
Everything you're saying, Garnet, I have to tell you, and I'm going to confirm this, I have gotten from my own guides. Like almost, I'm getting goosebumps, and it's not cold in here. Every single word you have said, like literally some of the stuff you've just said right now, like starting with one person, I just said that an hour ago to a fellow light worker, that it only takes one. It takes one. And starting, people are thinking of starting like this country level. No, we need to start even locally, like just one person, or like you said, all different channels. And
Yes.
the more these topics are not openly acceptable to talk about, but once somebody opens the doorway, you realize there's so many other people that are thinking the same things that are. So I'm so grateful that you're on here today and helping to share this. So I didn't want to stop your story there, but I wanted to confirm I agree 100% with everything you've said.
Well, thank you.
Excuse me.
Yeah, and so and so that was my first astral trip with Albert. And what happens is that when we finish our trips, I wake up the next morning in my bed, and I remember very clearly, vividly what I'd seen and heard in the astral trip, and then I would go to my computer and bang out some rough notes about what I saw, and they eventually formed the manuscripts for my subsequent books. So after the first book, all my subsequent 4 books are all about my astral adventures with Albert. And he's taken me to some amazing places. I've met some amazing wise souls on the spirit side, and I'm delighted to be part of his world, be his messenger. And the thing about Albert is that he has his own agenda. He wants me to see certain things, talk to certain people, so I can write about them. And he never tells me in advance what his agenda is, and he never tells me when he's coming into my life. So he won't say, 2 nights from now, I'm going to come and take you on a trip. He just shows up. That's just his way of doing things. So, but I'm used to that. I'm used to it. So the astral trips are all in my subsequent 4 books, which are Forever with Spirit, Dance of Heavenly Bliss, Dance of Eternal Rapture, and then the last one, which just came out, is Dancing with Angels in Heaven. So that's the sum total so far. People have asked me, am I going to write another book? And I said, I don't know. I'll wait for Albert to give me my marching orders, which he hasn't done yet. But.
Well, no, you answered some of my questions. So I was going to ask you, because I know there is no time or space on the other side, that past, present, and future is happening at the same time. But some of your interviews, and I wanted to ask you about some of these things, if you're open to talking about it, because you've met some incredible beings. I was hearing you talking about these spider type beings, and I'd love to. I've got a million gazillion questions, but I thought, where would you like to start? Like, what's some of the interesting things that you feel would be really pertinent for people to start, even if it piques their curiosity hearing this? Because a lot, we've got this general feeling of fear and anxiety, divisiveness, hate, all these lower vibrational feelings that we've discussed, you've just mentioned. And people are looking for hope. People are looking for answers. So with what you've encountered with Albert and throughout your books, is there anything maybe we could start with, or something you think is really interesting, whatever it may be, start giving people some hope and to start doing their own research and building on what you've shared?
Yes, and I will share some of them. There's so many things I can talk about. I feel like a mosquito at a nudist camp. I know what to do, but I hardly know where to start. But,
well, after I heard, I'm just going to tell you before you start, after I started listening, and I listened to bits and pieces from different interviews, because I told you before the show, I just say to Spirit, people that listen to the show know Spirit is collectively many of these things you're talking about. Where are we going with this? And that's where it goes, right? But you, some of the topics you talked about, I went, oh my God, like I got to ask him about this. I thought, no, we're not going to have enough time, but go ahead. I'm going to stop talking. I want to hear what you have to say.
One of the things to be interesting to a lot of people is the question of is there life elsewhere in the universe? Are ETs real? Are UFOs real? Well,
Thank
that
you.
was clearly answered for me.
Mhm.
Albert said that we have been visited by a number of different races, not just one, different races over the years. Like they started way back when time began, and they've been
Mhm.
watching what's going on. And these ETs are, he said, are all benevolent.
Mhm.
They're not going to harm us in any way. They're here to help us. They're watching what's going on, and they do help us in subtle ways. They will send us inspirational or intuitive flashes to people to invent things or develop techniques to make our lives better. And they've done this over the ages, but it's all very subtle. And so some inventor says, I just came up with a great idea about whatever, the light bulb. Chances are that they were inspired by the ETs who are trying to help us
Love it.
have a better planet. So they're there to help us. Actually went to visit a group of ETs that were orbiting our planet. They were grays, the typical kind of grays.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
And they just confirmed what Albert said, is that they're there to watch what's going on. The interesting thing is that they have amazing technology. Like they have warp drive. They can travel between the stars. Anti-gravity techniques, the whole trick. And they said, it's been hard for them to watch us go through all of our wars and conflicts, to watch our civilizations rise up and then crash, all the troubles that we have on planet Earth. But they are not allowed, because of
Prime
what they call
directive.
prime directive. Yes, they are not allowed to unduly interfere with what goes on. The directive is they can't unduly interfere with a developing race. They have to let it sort of develop on its own, and so they have to. So they have the technology. They could destroy all of our weapons just in the blink of an
In
eye.
a second.
Not allowed to do that. We have to work it out on our own. And so these people were very interesting, and they just confirmed that nobody's here to harm planet Earth. I know there's people out there who say that there's evil reptilians or whoever that are trying to take over the planet. Not so. Their technology is so advanced that had they wanted to take over Earth and enslave humans, they could have done so a long time ago. So they're not there for that. But then I met another group of intelligent ETs. You refer to the spider-like creatures.
Yeah.
This is what Albert took me to, on a planet near the center of our galaxy. And these people, they lived underground because their sun had become a red giant. So it's kind of fried all the stuff on the surface. So they lived underground. They look kind of like spiders, and we communicate by telepathy. They're very intelligent. And they took me into their big room, which was full of like computer-like screens and whatever. One of their jobs was to monitor all the planets in our galaxy to find out which ones were capable of harboring life. And when they found it, they would indicate that to the ETs, who would then seed some life from another planet into the new planet. And they were part of all these advanced races are part of what they call the Galactic Federation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is a federation, a group of the super intelligent ETs in our galaxy, all different kinds of races. And one of their goals is to not only to seed planets with life, but to watch what's going on with various planets. And one of the things that they're determined to do is that if a barbaric race develops warp drive and can travel to other star systems, other planets, they will prevent that, because they don't want this barbaric race to wage war on other planets. So as long as the barbarians are stuck on their planet, they just let them develop. And unfortunately, they kind of regard us as being barbaric, and so they're watching. Really. And should we develop a warp drive before we've gotten rid of all of our negative emotions, they could well stop us, but we're a long ways away from that. I mean, eventually we'll develop warp drive, but they're watching us. And so it was very interesting. It really reaffirms. A lot of people know that UFOs are spacecraft from ETs, and it's not disclosure yet. What they did say was that when the time is right, when they think that humans are ready to accept the fact that there are intelligent ET races in our galaxy and have been visiting Earth, when we're ready to accept that, they will make full and open disclosure. But in the meantime, they're just concerned, as are some of the governments on Earth, that if they make open contact, that there'd be panic and all kinds of other things.
You know what, Garnet? I wouldn't have believed that, except for what has happened over the past 2 years. And then I realized we're not ready. because when I said to you, I always start with people's story about how they begin. Mine was crazy. It was a paranormal activity, like violent, evil, like awful, like for 11 years in my previous home. I've also had some missing time. Like, did they explain that to you? Like, I've had all these crazy experiences I never expected in a million years, coming from a big pharma science background. So many of these things you're talking, I knew we were going to have a great conversation. It's right up my alley. So did they explain to you, like, for say someone like me that's missing time, or I've met people that remember their encounters, and some kind weren't quite so pleasant. Like, did they explain what was behind that at all?
Yeah. Basically, it's part of their monitoring of human activity. Is they
Okay.
sometimes will, people call it an abduction. They're just sort of like borrowing them from their life
Right.
and implanting communication devices or other things so they can monitor us. And they generally try to block out the memory of that because it might be too distressful for some people. So some people have this gap in time. A lot of times that gap can be released under hypnosis.
Yes. We forgot to mention you do hypnosis as well, don't you? I have to
Yes.
get into that too. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then some people remember it, but they mean us no harm. It's all very in the interest of science and them understanding us. And so that's how they do it. There are, in fact, ETs who are living among us.
Yes.
And I met one, and they have great discussions. You'd never know. Yes, I met one. It was a lady, and she was in my book. I said that her name was Amanda, and she was working at the Oxford Medical Hospital.
Okay.
And I changed the name and the place to protect her identity. But
Sure.
she was. I was there with Albert, and she was in her human disguise. And then Albert said, "Okay, let's show him what you really look like." So her disguise dissolved away, and she was a blue humanoid alien.
So like one of the avians, like sort of more like that, or just like
I'm not sure.
Arcturian, or
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by those, but she was just a blue humanoid.
yeah, because Arcturians, like with the readings I get with people that come in, especially with mediumship. So I agree, like I said, with everything you've said here. That, and I don't know everything. I tell people that, nor am I 100% right. Nobody is. We're human. But I've had some interesting. I had this lady that had a near-death experience, and she kept calling it her visions. And she actually, I'm not going to say abducted, but she was aboard an alien ship. And I don't know, I believe she had really advanced telepathy, but she didn't realize it. And she was telling me about the beings that were there. And she was laying on a table. And as she described them, I literally could see them. And there was a blue humanoid who she described. And I'm looking up as I'm talking, doing the reading, and I go, "Is this them?" She goes, "Oh my God, that's him right there." I'm getting goosebumps again. And he was very humanoid looking, blue. And she explained he was Arcturian. And then I've heard of the avian race before too, as I understand they can be quite that brilliant, brilliant blue, but more bird-like features. I don't know everything, but
this person was basically pretty much like a human, except no hair and stuff like that, but blue skin. And then she mentioned where she came from. And I didn't think to ask. I was just interested in
well,
talking.
I know there's so much to see and take in, so I hear you.
And so what she was doing, her disguise was sort of a very advanced holographic disguise, which was so real that nobody around her could have detected that she wasn't human. So she worked in the neuroscience lab in this hospital, and her object was to try to figure out what makes humans have negative emotions or let their negative emotions get out of control. So she was trying to help humans by trying to find why we do this, because these negative emotions are quite unusual with all the ET races in our galaxy. Like we're a one-off kind of group, and and I actually did find out on another trip why it is. But she just said she didn't. If she knew why it was, she didn't disclose it. Anyway, so there she was. She said there's a bunch of them. Nobody will ever know who they are. They can't be detected, and they're here again just to help us. And so they're very, very, very friendly. So what I should tell you is about the human gene factor is that on one of my trips I went to. I call it a utopian planet. It was like it was very advanced. They had very advanced city. They had the ability to travel between the stars, and they were all very, very happy and harmonious. They had no negative emotions. And they explained to me that, and these were humans just like us, identical to us. They're
Wow.
just identical to us. And they were aware of what went on planet Earth. And they said, yeah, long time ago, we were like you guys on Earth, where there was wars and conflicts and murders and, terrorist bombings and everything else. And their scientists discovered that what caused the negative emotions was a defective gene in the human body.
Wow.
And so through genetic engineering over the years, they got rid of this gene. So now this society was peaceful, harmonious, no conflicts, no fighting, no nothing. Men and women were absolutely equal in every respect. Everyone had the same thing. There was no sort of hierarchy of people with money versus people who don't. They didn't have any. They got everything from their state. So it was a very peaceful, harmonious society. Because
can I ask you something though? Okay, so I have a theory. Now, again, I don't know everything, but in human nature, and I'm not saying it's a good thing, but when we are faced with tragedy, difficulty, something really negative in our lives, right? We have the choice. We can choose to stay in that vibration, live in that low energy, anger, depression, you name it. Or people have the choice. It's almost like an impetus for change. And we've seen many great things come out of people's tragedies. For example, John, I forget what his name is, but I think it's America's Most Wanted. His little boy years ago was abducted at a mall, murdered. And him and his wife, I mean, obviously anybody would be devastated, your child, never mind how tragic it was, but he started one of the biggest movements to catch people that are doing horrible things like this. So this is what I'm saying, that because when things are status quo and things are beautiful and harmonious, and, we've all said it one time in our life, oh, I wish this could go on forever, right? We don't want it to change. We want to stay status quo. We don't, you know what I mean? We're just happy to just be. So did you learn anything about that with this race? Like, how do they evolve? How do they grow with their soul when they're incarnating, say, onto that planet?
Well, they know where. I mean, every soul knows basically the lay of the land for where you're incarnating. So souls who incarnate into that society, they know what they're getting into. Souls who incarnate on planet Earth as a human, they know what they're getting into. Basically, they know there's a lot of horrible things that can happen. So it's a matter of the soul's choice. So, I mean, there wouldn't be that much to learn in that society or soul just because it's so peaceful, and you
maybe
learn
just
more
to learn how to enjoy life.
Yeah, and so there's obviously a lot of souls who did that. Sometimes maybe you have a harsh incarnation and you want to have an easy one, so you can go there. But basically, how they, as I mentioned, how they changed from the world of negative emotions into positive love, compassion, and so on, was this genetic engineering. And I said to them, that would be very useful for our planet. Can you tell me the formula so I can give it to our scientists?
Yeah.
And they said, no, can't do that. We're not going to hand you the answers on the silver platter. You have to figure it out for yourself. And so, unfortunately, they left it at that. But it gives me hope that if they can do it, we can do it as well. Yeah. So it was very, very interesting trip. The other little side thing about that planet, which is quite interesting to me because I enjoy food, is that they had developed. They're all very healthy, lean, trim, robust. They all looked exactly the same. No matter what age they were, they all looked like they were like 30. And they said that long ago, their scientists had developed what they call a diet pill. And if you take the pill, you can eat as much as you want of anything, and you wouldn't gain an ounce of weight.
I love it.
and no other adverse health consequences, no rise in cholesterol or anything. And so they learned that humans enjoy eating and drinking. And so they decided that with this pill, they can go to a restaurant every night and eat decadent food, as much as they want, no health consequences whatsoever. So that was very interesting. I wanted them to give me the formula for that pill.
Yeah.
The same thing, So failing that, I'm going to have to continue to restrict my intake of cheeseburgers and chocolate mousse.
Yeah, me too. Because I know I have a friend, maybe you've met him, Augie Nost. He's with Broadcast Team Alpha, him and Nori Love. Maybe you haven't. Maybe I have
Sorry, repeat his name.
Augie Nost. He's it's with Broadcast Team Alpha. If not, I'm gonna have to introduce you guys if you're open to it, because I'm telling you, this is right up his alley. And I remember years ago, he said to me, do you know who won the Nobel Peace Prize? I think it was back in 2009. And I said, no. Why would I know that? He goes, because everybody in the world should know about this. I said, okay, do tell. This is a private conversation. Actually, we've talked about it when we've done shows. And he said it was two scientists that discovered what is responsible for the aging process. He said it was never put out in the public, never advertised. And he's a big believer, as am I, that your mind is one of the most powerful things we own. And we are much more powerful as human beings than we've ever been taught to believe. That's part of my mission of teaching people. And so it's possible to reverse the aging process or extend life if you want by focusing in meditation and what have you on the telomeres. So I didn't know if Albert had shared anything about, say, anti-aging, or these people, like you said, they all look 30 years old.
Yeah, and these people lived for several hundred years because they had done away with all diseases, and they could fix traumatic injuries and so on. So they lived for a long time. And in fact, these people, when they decided that time's up, they would go into what Albert described as vapor chambers, where they literally go in there and get vaporized, and they go back to spirit. And so that's how most of them ended their lives. They chose to do it. It was sort of like, okay, I've been here for 300 years, time to move on.
So no guilt of you committed suicide, you're going to hell, because how many times do we see that? Never mind as a medium, people that are so afraid to cross, if you will, because of what their religious dogma that they're afraid of, right?
Yeah, and I was raised with that, of course.
Me too.
Hell and purgatory, But anyway, Albert he clearly indicated to me that hell, purgatory do not exist. The devil doesn't exist. That they're all inventions by religious holy men to control the masses through fear. And that's
when you try to explain this, though, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to say, because in the beginning, I really struggled with this because I went to Catholic school, I was forced to go to church. Very similar story like yourself. I was not a practicing Catholic anymore because none of it made sense. I never believed God was this angry, vengeful being that if you didn't listen to his 10 commandments, he was going to strike you down and what have you. And when I first heard this concept about, there is no hell, there is no purgatory. But I had a hard time. And now what I've realized that we're thinking from our human perspective here, because you get people. I had somebody on a call-in show I was a guest on asking, is there a hell? And again, I always remind people, I don't have all the answers. It's just my understanding. We're looking at this from a human perspective of justice versus punishment versus not understanding the bigger picture that we're incarnating. I think I heard you say this, many of us do, that we are basically everlasting energy souls, just here to have a human experience in this physical body. It's clumsy, it's frail. We come in with spiritual amnesia, but that, we make all these agreements with other people. It's almost like looking at a play, if you will, right? And when we look back on the life, we see that, we're the main character, and all these players are coming in from the wings to help the play all play out. So they're there to play their part to help us achieve. We've made agreements before, but when you try and explain this to people, it's so hard to wrap your mind around it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because I see you nodding.
Well, you're absolutely right. When we prepare our life plans, of course, we set out certain challenges and lessons that we want to encounter to grow and evolve. But we need to have the cooperation of the other souls who are in our life, like parents, siblings, so on. And so we tend to travel in soul groups where the groups will get together, and one time you're the mother, next time you're the son, next time you're the uncle, and we sort of change places, change sexes all the time, so we get the full perspective of a human life on Earth. And so we need to have these people, sign on to our life plan or sign a contract, and we agree to be part of their lives. And so that's how it all works. But the thing is that you can't sort of force somebody on the other side to become part of your life. So it all has to be a cooperation.
Yes.
We'll agree to go and become a part of our lives on Earth. The trouble is, of course, as you mentioned, is that once we get here, we forget all that.
Yes.
So we're left to be floundering around and try to find our way through life and try to hit all the points, or as many as we can in our life plan. But most of the time we don't, because we stray off course.
Okay, sorry guys, we cut off here. Hopefully we can melt this. Go ahead, Garnet, as you were saying.
Yeah, your metaphor about life on Earth being like a play is very much dead on. Albert says that souls on the spirit side, when they look at what's going on Earth, they look at it as sort of like a play. And so you see, when you're in a play on Earth, say you're starring in a play on Broadway, and the script calls for you to stab and kill another actor, when the curtain goes down, you don't get arrested for murder because it didn't really happen. Okay, so souls on the spirit side, when they come back from a life on Earth, they look at it as the same way. They say, okay, this person, that person, everyone was following a script, but it doesn't last forever because you leave everything behind except your memories when you go back to the spirit side. So that's why people have trouble with the idea that everything goes back to the spirit side. So, for example, if you were to kill me in this life, when we both get back to the spirit side, I won't feel any hatred or animosity or need for revenge because there's nothing but unconditional love there. And so it'd be sort of like, okay, we were in a play together and you killed me, and all right, well, we'll go on to the next play, kind of thing. So that's a very apt metaphor that you described. Life is like a play. That's very hard for us here because when we're here, it seems very, very real.
Because we're experiencing it, and it's been so it's so difficult. But when we get back and we look back, exactly like you said, it's like, why did it seem so difficult? It's the same reason when you talked about the Council of Advisors as we're picking or making our life plan or contract, right? They're there to help guide us and advise us because it's such a different perspective from being in our 3D self versus, say, 5D or higher up where we come from, right? I call it going back home.
Yeah, exactly. And because, as you mentioned before, because there's no linear time, there's just a big now. So what we would view a lifetime of 80 years for a human on Earth seems like a long time. There, it's just a blink of an eye. So you're a soul saying, I'm going to go incarnate on planet Earth. You're sort of back before they even know you're gone, kind of thing. And so so the soul's there. This is a very brief adventure to learn things, to grow and evolve, but it's not a major hardship. Different when you get here because then, of course, you don't appreciate all that. And 80 years can
because you don't remember. You don't remember all that you knew. But the one thing I also understand, I'd love to hear your thoughts or what Albert has shared, is I understand, and this is part of my message when I teach too, is how lucky we are to be here. None of us are here by accident. And the other thing is there are so many souls that want to come here to have this experience because although it's difficult, it's quick, it's just a blink of an eye, there's so much potential to learn. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Earth School is really a very tough school, one of the toughest
Earth School,
in the universe. And Albert has always said that every human here should pat themselves on the back to be so courageous to come to this very tough school. So it is a very tough school, but because it's so tough, we can learn a lot. You learn a lot more from your tragedies than you do from your successes. I mean, that's just standard. Everyone kind of knows that. You don't want to go through a tragedy or a rough time, but you actually learn a lot more than if you have a big success. And so there are a lot of difficulties on planet Earth. It's no walk in the park, but that's by design. And we all knew what Earth would be like before we incarnated. And if we didn't feel like we were up to it, we wouldn't have come. But we're all here now. And unfortunately, we don't remember why we came or what lessons we wanted to learn. And that's where we have to sort of try to rely on our spirit guides who are constantly sending us messages about which way we should go. So when you come to a fork in the road, your guides will tell you to take the left fork or the right fork. And they're doing that with a view to they know what's in your life plan, so they know what you really wanted to intend to do. The problem is that their messages are very, very subtle. They're like flashes of intuition, whispers in your mind, gut feelings, coincidental events. Too many of us just don't recognize these messages, don't know where they're coming from, and don't pay any attention to them. And that's one of the big problems. So our challenge as humans is to try to be better listeners in terms of what our guides are telling us, and they're coaching us 24/7. They're always there. You're never alone, and they want us to have the best journey possible. But they know that we're probably going to stray off course. And no matter how many times we take the wrong turn, we'll never become lost, because we'll always go back to the spirit side where we can regroup and decide, okay, what did I learn from that life? And do I want to have another one? And if so, what challenges do I want to put in my next life? And it's all a free choice. Nobody tells us what to do. We don't have to reincarnate. We can stay in the spirit side, or we can go over to the spider-like planet and incarnate into the spider creature if we want. Anywhere in the universe, we can take any life form we want. So it's entirely up to us. And it doesn't matter whether you've had. I often, a lot of my clients in hypnosis have a question like, how many lives have I had? It doesn't really matter. I asked Albert, how many lives have I had? He said, oh, several hundred. And I said, does that make me an old soul? And he said, no, you're just a slow learner.
Oh. I don't want to hear that. Because that's what you're very intuitive, because I'm finding you're picking up a lot of the things I'm thinking or going to ask you. Because what I have found, now I could be wrong, but I find that if you want an old soul or a slow learner, some of us are slow learners, okay?
Yeah.
But those of us that say versus a new soul, and so lots of times we can't tell the difference. Sometimes I found, I believe I probably run into some newer souls, could be wrong, but my point is that I find that a lot of people that either I believe are old souls or are here maybe for the light worker path or whatever, they don't always have the easiest lives. It's almost like, you hear the old saying, God doesn't give you more than you can handle, but we do. We have a lot on our plate. And again, we always have that choice, I believe, right? You can sit, and we've all met people like that relish and live in victimhood, and my life is so horrible, and God, feel sorry for me, feel pity, whatever. Or we have the choice to evolve and grow and learn. But I can honestly say I've met very few people in this field that have had just Brady Bunch, TV series life where everything's wonderful. And don't get me wrong, most people have tragedy and hardship, but I guess how I'm trying to say it is, those of us that are in this field, and I don't want to sound elitist because I don't mean it that way, we've had some pretty crappy stuff happen. What's your thoughts? Like, is it because we've had the experience to know how to deal with it before, or what has Albert shared?
Yeah, it helps, because as even though we forget most of the things, we do develop as souls. We do have some knowledge that sort of will spring forward as we go into a new life, and so we don't start from scratch every time. We do remember some things. There are some memories from past lives, some lessons, some wisdom that does leak through to our current life. We don't know where it's coming from, but it does happen. So you don't sort of start at the bottom rung of the ladder every time. You can kind of, as you move, you can kind of start at a higher level. Yeah. And it's really interesting that I should tell you a funny story.
I'd love to hear it.
When Albert first told me that I could choose my life, and I chose this one. And I said, well, if I had a free choice to choose my life on Earth, why didn't I choose to be Prince Charles?
Yes.
I mean, he's got lots of money. He's got 150 servants. He even has one servant who squeezes the toothpaste onto his toothbrush.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I read that somewhere. I didn't make it up. I read it somewhere. And so I said to Albert, well, okay, but I really would have thought being Prince Charles would be a lot easier life. And he said, no. He said, not for you. He said, we thought that you needed to have the experience of squeezing your own toothpaste. And so that's why you're in this.
But we all get an opportunity, don't we? Like, I don't know. I have some odd conversations with my partner about stuff like this. I always have. Or I was thinking about this the other day. Like, I'm sure we've all had at least numerous opportunities to say, you see, I'm not into that kind of stuff, materialism and whatever else. I could care less, right? And I think part of it is with working, I always say, working in the NICU, I was been there to see life at the beginning hundreds of times, never get tired of it. It's such a miracle. And then I worked in palliative care before I hurt my back. And, some of the biggest life lessons I learned, I worked with the homeless. Actually, when I first went into community nursing, I was a VON nurse, a Victorian Order of Nurses. And the one thing I've learned, it doesn't matter where you come from in life, but especially if you're terminal and you've got time to go through that process, I have never heard with hundreds of people being so deeply honored to be there. They chose to die at home and to be part of that process with that family. is I've never heard a patient say, I regret that I didn't make more money. I regret that I didn't buy more yachts, that I didn't buy more this. It's always, I wish I had told people that mean the most to me how much I love them, and every day, several times a day. I wish I had spent more time with my children growing up and just spending the time, like things like this that matter. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that with Albert too. Because like I said, you see these celebrities, or you see Prince Charles having someone squeeze his toothpaste. We've probably
Yeah,
had those lifetimes too.
What he said was that he was being facetious, obviously, when he's telling me the story, but he said, you can look at anybody, you can look at a movie star, royalty, sports star, and may think they have everything going, but they all have their own problems,
Yep.
and so you can't tell what's going on with them.
I think we're seeing that with Johnny Depp right now. Not that I'm following it, but I actually said to Dell the other day, I said, we're nobody. And I said, we've got nothing to hide, but I would not want my dirty laundry out there for the world to see. And when you're seeing what they're going through, dear God, oh dear God. And you think they got everything, right? They got money, they've got fame, they got all these things people aspire to that think that are so important. But we never really know what goes on behind closed doors, right?
Yeah, no, that's right. And we never really know why we chose our lives. I mean, we generally know that we're here to grow and evolve. What in particular we wanted to accomplish, we're not allowed to know that, which makes it very difficult. We'll get all that when we go back to the spirit side, because then it'll be like, here's the life plan I had, and you sort of check off, okay, I've got these boxes, but I missed the other ones, and it's all a matter of. And then the big thing about when you transition back is you have a life review.
Yes.
And you can review the life you just finished in very great detail. And
with no judgment, right? No judgment.
It's just nobody judges you. God, source, nobody judges you. Mm-hmm. You in effect judge yourself in terms of sort of like, I'm rating my performance, not in any way to cause somebody to feel guilty or remorseful. It's just a learning tool. One of the neat things about a life review is that you get to not only see what happened around you or what you did, you get to hear the thoughts and feel the emotions of the people you interacted with, which is really a great learning tool, because you can go through life, you can offend people without intending to, just by saying something. Right. You realize that one of the things you have to do is, before you speak, think carefully about how the other person is going to take it. And if you don't want to go around offending people, you have to think about that and try to not offend people. The life review really helps you realize all the places that you've offended people, but also the good things. If you were shoveling the driveway of your senior citizen neighbor one day, they were watching you through the window, you can feel their love and gratitude for you. So it's not just the bad things. You get the bad, you get the good, you get the whole picture. And then you sort of go away from there and say, okay, do I want to go back to another life? And if so, what am I going to try to improve on? What kind of life do I want to get into? So it's very, very, very interesting. And it's not distressful at all. And it's, everyone goes through this, whether you like it or not. You go through the life review. And it's not that anyone would object to it, because it's really a good, you hear stories of people who are drowning and their life flashes before their eyes. Well, the life review is like that, except it's not brief. It's sort of like watching a 3D movie. You can go slow, you can go fast, you can go back over things, whatever you want. So it's really, really quite an amazing tool. And that's just part of the cycle of reincarnation. And it's just sort of the finishing touch to a life on Earth. And then you can decide where you go from there.
I love what you're saying there, because again, I don't know, I've been doing a lot of deep thinking, and guys, I should have said this. I've had this influenza bug for 2.5 weeks. Garnet and I have been trying to plan this, and he was so kind. He said, you want to, maybe rebook? I said, no, I've been dying to talk to you. So I've been doing a lot of deep thought, and exactly some of the things you said, Garnet, including, and I'm not always perfect, but I do try to remember this, that, you get someone that's a real jerk to you, like they're just awful, or you're in a store, or, whatever it may be. We're human, yes, and I know that's an excuse, but yeah, sometimes we have knee-jerk reactions, but I do try to remember it's not my job to judge. But the most important thing is, and it relates a little bit to the life review, is we have no idea what is going on in somebody's life. Especially if there's someone we don't know and we encounter them. There's a really good series, actually, again, Dell watching TV. I think it's called The Outlaws, from the UK. It's Stephen Merchant. He worked with Ricky Gervais, I think. Anyways, from the UK. But what he did was he made this series where these most unlikely people from all walks of life have broken the law over in the UK, and they have to get together to perform 100 hours of community service. You don't know why they're there. There's a lawyer, there's a businessman, there's a girl just going up, like you name it. But now the series is going through breaking down what their stories are and how they ended up where they were and why. And I think that's so important. If we could just remember this as human beings. What does Albert share on that, or what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, he's told me many times is that, you know, and to repeat myself again, is that this is a learning experience on this planet, and we chose it. So above all, we should not ever think of ourselves as the victim. You know, like people would get into tough times and they say, well, why is God or the universe doing this to me? It's not doing anything to you. You chose your life. The thing you have to do is that when you come into a situation is to learn from it and say, okay, what should I learn from this, and then move on. So it's always a continuing learning experience, and that's just part of why we're here. One of the interesting things that he told me about life on Earth is that he says no one dies by accident. So our souls decide when to leave. And when we develop our life plans, we all build in like 5 or 6 exit points. When you come to an exit
God, you're speaking my language. I've studied near-death experiences for 40 years, and I was going to ask you about this, but go ahead. I know you didn't mention that, but go ahead. Getting all excited.
So when you travel through life and you come to an exit point, your soul can then decide, okay, do I want to leave now, or do I want to move on to the next one? Your soul has the absolute right to decide when to leave, even though our human minds aren't aware of that. We don't know what our soul is thinking, but our soul chooses when to go. So the interesting thing is that if somebody dies in a car accident, it's not an accident. They chose that as their exit point. Their soul did, and so it's all our souls really have the control of it. Or if someone's dying from terminal cancer, the soul decided to start that disease and ended up, you know, with the terminal cancer, death by cancer. So our souls decide when to leave. So no one dies by accident. And the other interesting thing is that this relates to guardian angels. I said to Albert, well, you know, I have free will and everyone else has free will, and they're all running amok around us. And how can you prevent against somebody causing your death before your soul's ready to go? He said, oh, well, that's where guardian angels come in. Guardian angels know when your soul wants to leave. And if you're in a situation where it could end up with serious injury, death, they will intervene. And so it's very nice to know that we have guardian angels, we have guides.
I've seen video. Have you seen video of like actual light beings? Like there was one video I've seen. It was a gentleman, I think he was working on an 18-wheeler rig or something like that. He had security cameras and the rig gave through and it crushed him, like went down on him. And you literally can see on the video these 2 lights coming up underneath. I'm getting goosebumps again, lifting up the rig so he didn't die. He had a hell of a recovery, but
yeah, those is guardian angels, and they can actually physically intervene, like lifting things up. They can, you know, if you're at an intersection and they can see that if you go to the next intersection, you're going to get T-boned by somebody, they will delay your light so that you're not there at that intersection.
That's what I try and tell myself. If I run into a delay or, God forbid, a flat tire or whatever it is, I try and remind myself, there's a reason why we had this delay. Doesn't mean I'm going to ever know what it is, but there is a reason, right?
Yeah, exactly, and it's usually your guardian. Excuse me. You know, and sometimes, like you say, if you're going on a plane trip where they can see the plane's going to crash, they will send you messages to say change your flight, and if you don't follow that, they'll give you a flat tire on the way to the airport, and you'll miss your flight. You know, as you mentioned, So it's very comforting to know that they're there to protect us, but when our time's up and our soul says we want to go, they will stand to the side and let the accident or the cancer or whatever else happen. So
plus I also understand, like I said, I've studied near-death experiences for 40 years, professionally as well as personally. And I believe I had one as a toddler. I was very, very ill at a fever of 106 and kept seizuring, and they kept sending me home because the seizure didn't happen and emerge. And then the last one did. And I was in the hospital for 2 or 3 weeks. It was my mom said I had a head full of ringlets. I was about 2.5 years old. The next day, my hair went poker straight for years. Like she just almost said it almost sounded like I'd had a complete physical change. But the thing I wanted to ask you, and I've often wondered, I get lots of questions about this, is the purpose of a walk-in and also a near-death experience. Like, I know it can be an exit point, but is it also maybe to remind souls why we're here? Maybe our work isn't finished. I've heard many of those type of messages. I'd love to hear what your thoughts or Albert has shared with you on that.
Yeah, and we did talk about that. He said that when somebody has a near-death experience, they are taken to a place, generally the spirit side, that their guides think that they need to see. That's why not everyone in a near-death experience sees exactly the same thing. They get shown what their guides think they need, and it's to remind them who they are and to send them on a different course in their life, so that most people who've had NDEs, they sort of change their life, their outlook on life changes, and everything changes. And so this is sort of like to get them to change course and carry on and learn some more in their journey. And I'm pretty sure that most people who have NDEs no longer fear death. And they just carry on,
and they come back with gifts. Like I found most people come back with gifts like that they didn't have before. Have you seen that too?
I don't deal with a lot of NDE people, but I know what Albert told me is that they're very real and they're there for a purpose, and their guides orchestrate them to a place where they will see something, talk to somebody that will help them realize who they are and then change their course. And so it's all tended to be very positive. And it seems like there's more and more people with NDE experiences, but Albert says they've always been around. Years ago, people were afraid to talk about them, and now people are starting to come out, and so you hear a lot more experiences about NDE. So it's all very positive. It's a learning tool for the people on Earth. I mean, I've never had one. I don't hope to actually die to go ahead and do one. I mean, I get all my information from Albert. So I have my...
You're so blessed. You really are.
I have my experiences with Albert, and I don't have to die. But you know, he never tells me, he won't tell me personal things. He won't tell me when I'm going to die.
Oh, you don't want to know that, do you?
Nobody wants to know that. He's not going to tell me that. He doesn't tell me what I should do tomorrow or next week or the next month. He says I have to figure that out for myself like everyone else.
That's not his job.
His job is to tell me things that he thinks everyone should know and understand, and so he speaks to me directly so that I can write books about what he's telling me and what I see. And so that's why he comes to me in that way. And
that's where I was going with this. Let's talk about your healing and hypnosis really quick, and I want to get into your books. We're almost out of time. I told you this 2 hours was good. I could probably have you back every week and have a different conversation.
Well, the hypnosis modality that I do is called quantum healing hypnosis technique, QHHT, and a variation of that is BQH, beyond quantum healing. The difference between the two is that QHHT has to be done in person, so that we have to be in the same room. BQH can be done remotely using Zoom, but you get to the same result. And how I got into this was that all of my books were published by Ozark Mountain Publishing, which was owned by Dolores Cannon.
Oh, I love Dolores.
Yeah. And so I met Dolores through the publishing scene with my books. Actually met her in person once in 2013 in Arkansas.
Cool. Because her daughter took it over now, right?
Yeah, Julia took it over. Dolores passed away in 2014. So after I'd finished the manuscript for my fourth book, I said to Albert, what should I do now? He said, you're going to write book 5, but put it on the back burner for now. I want you to take the QHHT course. And I was familiar with I hadn't really thought about it before. So I took the course on his advice. He's always given me good advice. And so I took the level 1 course online. Level 2, I took from Julia Cannon. It was a 4-day intensive.
Oh, beautiful.
And so that's what I practice. Now, what it is that the clients get induced hypnotically into a very deep trance called the theta level.
Yes.
Which is way deeper than the usual alpha level. So the theta level. And in the induction, 2 things happen. First part is they go to a past life regression. They go to one or more past, parallel, future lives where they're actually there. They're actually reliving it. And that is chosen for them by their higher self. And higher self will often choose a life that has some relevance to their current life. It could be that there's main characters in that past life who are in their current life. It could be that there's some unresolved karma from that past life that's now they're facing it again in this life. And so the realization of that really helps the client. So then the really good part, the second part, is when I make direct contact with their higher self. So their higher self will come through and channel through the client, use the client's voice mechanism to speak to me directly. And what I'll do is I'll ask the questions that the client brings with them to the session. And the questions vary. And a lot of them are personal, like, what's my life purpose? Am I in the right job? Should I change jobs? How do I find a life partner? How come I don't get along with my brother-in-law? And those kinds of questions. The higher self will answer directly, verbally. It's all recorded, so the client will have the recording after, and they get some amazing answers. And it's all the clients I've had have been really amazed at how satisfied they feel after the session. They got their answers. Sometimes they get an answer they don't like. I mean, the higher self is very candid, but the higher self is on their side because the higher self knows the client better than the client knows themselves.
Yes.
The higher self has been with them every step of the way in this lifetime and every other lifetime they've had. So they have the whole picture, which we don't. And so they know what we plan to accomplish, and they can give us answers to try to steer us on the right course. But they'll never give an answer that will cause anxiety or distress to a client.
Right.
And if the answer would do that, they'll say, we're not prepared to answer that at this time. But that's very rare. Most of the time they answer the question. So it's really been very fulfilling for me. I get a lot of satisfaction helping people one-on-one. And sometimes the higher self will throw out something that's a general application that's just good for everyone. And so it's good to know those things. So it's been a really great practice for me.
I love it because I've been drawn to it for years. I'm signed up with Julia's letter now and stuff, and I've often thought that might be a course sometime I wanted to take. So I'm glad you've explained it so well for people, because believe me, it's life-changing, isn't it, Garnet? And very instantaneous, like when you connect at that level, right? Like if someone wants to make a change or the answers or what have you.
Yes, absolutely. And they can also help you people with phobias and health afflictions. They can actually fix some of the things, or they can tell the client what they need to do, change their lifestyle, their diet, or whatever it is to fix whatever is bothering them. And sometimes it's quite simple. Sometimes somebody I had a client who had a constant pain in his stomach. Doctors couldn't figure out what it was, and the higher self said, "Oh well, in a past life, some thieves stabbed you in the belly to steal your food." So that was sort of coming forward. And then once the realization was there that this is a hangover from a past life, it disappeared. And the higher self said to keep it away, they had to change their diet because this client was on a junk food diet. And so the higher self said, we'll take it away, but if you eat junk food again, it's going to come back. And so,
yeah, but that's the body, right? Like I say, pain is the body's voice and message. So like when I do my healing work, right? And I truly believe the human body is capable of healing itself. It's miraculous what we have been given. But for whatever we encounter, whether it's energetically, spiritually, could be trauma, could be past life, right? We end up, I believe we're meant to be in balance and run energy from spirit all the way down to the center of the earth. And then we get these energetic blocks, right? That we can encounter. So I kind of see what you're saying there, that like with the diet, like the body was saying, this is where it's come from a past life. This is how we get rid of it. But if we don't make the change that you need to make, it's going to keep coming back. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah, that's often their advice. Sometimes they'll just fix it immediately. Like I had one young lady who had a pain in her leg all of her life. Doctors couldn't figure it out. It's like one of those, it's all in your head kind of thing. So when we asked her higher self, where did this pain come from? Why does she have it? Higher self said, well, a couple of her discs in her spine were misaligned. So I said, can you fix that? And they said, sure. When the client came out of trance, she said, and she remembers hearing the words of the higher self. She said that when they said they were fixing it, she could feel things moving in her spine. She could feel things moving around, and she no longer had a pain in her leg. And so that's an example of how they can do it, immediately. But in some cases, people identify with their affliction. If they identify with the affliction, they can say, "Yeah, I want to be cured of whatever," but deep down inside, they do not want to.
No, because it's their whole identity. It's their whole identity, their whole life.
Yeah, like Dolores Cannon tells the story of a man who had MS, who was in a wheelchair. His wife had to look after his every need. He came to her and said, "I want to be cured of MS." When they got to her, his higher self, the higher self said, "No, He doesn't want to be cured. He's telling you that. He's afraid that if he's cured, his wife will leave him because she doesn't have to look after him anymore. So deep down inside is like, no, I want to continue. I don't want to lose my wife. So there's various examples of why they won't help people, but in a lot of cases they can. I mean, haven't had any really serious illnesses come to me, but Dolores has had examples of somebody coming in a wheelchair and they leave the session walking. Other people who are scheduled for major heart surgery, after the session, they don't have to have it anymore. So those are dramatic examples. Of course, Dolores did this over like a period of 40 years. So she was very, very good at it. And so I'm just struggling to follow in her footsteps.
But you know what, Garnet, you must be meant for it, or Albert wouldn't have steered you in this direction. And I truly believe that, because when we connect with our guides, you know what, and I don't know if you found this, but I find that if I don't listen, no, I'm not going to get punished, but lots of times I get to see the repercussions of maybe why I didn't follow it, because I don't know about you. Maybe it's me being a Leo. I'm not really into astrology or anything, and I've mellowed with age, but I can tend to be quite stubborn. So I'm having this argument in my head about, no, I'm not, no, fine. Like, for example, very quickly, Dell's friends, they know what I do. Again, you know, people are respectful, but I'm sure they think I'm a wingnut. So we were going to a barbecue there, and I heard Spirit say, grab your, it was one of my mediumship decks. And I'm arguing in my head, no, I'm not bringing that with me. Grab your deck. I'm not bringing it with me. They think I'm a nut. Bring it with you. Fine. So I grab it. We get there. I run into this girl I'd never met before. And her mom had passed away about 6-8 months ago, and she was having a really hard time with it. And we ended up doing the most beautiful reading in the kitchen of all places. And then I don't need the deck, but I find it's powerful, right? It's quick, easy answers. Whatever Spirit gives you, usually the card will match with it. It's kind of a really cool thing, right? And then afterwards, she had mentioned in the reading that her mom's favorite color was fuchsia. I almost got tears sharing this with you. And there's a picture of her and I, and I think it was Dell or somebody else. And right in front of her, there's a whole light of fuchsia right in front of her heart chakra. So there's an example, right? Now, nothing bad would have happened, but I wouldn't have had that opportunity maybe if I hadn't listened. Have you had that happen too?
I've learned from experience that when Spirit asks you to do something, whether it be Albert or whoever, because eventually, if you can dig in your heels and be stubborn, eventually they're going to win. And so now I just learned when Albert says, do this, okay, sir, away I go, you know. So I've learned that you have to sort of follow the advice, otherwise it can go hard on you. And so I'm very keen about following Albert's advice, and everyone really should do it. But the trouble is that our minds, to pardon the pun, have a mind of their own.
Yes,
our egos are always there. Our egos think that they know what's best for us, but they really don't. And they're always trying to interfere with messages from Spirit. And oftentimes in the QHHT sessions, people will be in the hypnosis, they will hear a little voice, which is their ego, saying, you're not hypnotized, you're just making this up. And the ego is trying to derail the whole thing because they don't want you to contact your higher self. You know, Dolores Cannon used to refer to a person's ego as Mr. Stupid. Getting in the way.
I have a mentor that I work with for my Crystal Reiki master's course, and I loved how she did. She said, you know, you keep hearing in this light worker field or whatever people want to call it, you need to banish your ego. You need to banish your ego. Well, your ego is there for a reason, right? To keep you safe. So what she taught us, and I really like, and I've kind of adopted this method when teaching, is to make friends with your ego. So, for example, when we're doing an Akashic Records practitioner, we invite the ego to be a participant, but they are to sit on the guideline. How do we word it? To sit on the sidelines as a curious participant. If there's any questions or feedback, we're willing to entertain it. We're willing to listen to it, but we want you to feel a part of it. But we don't need you to take the reins, basically.
That's exactly what I advise clients when I hear that little voice. I say, just tell your ego to stand to the side. You can watch what's going on, but we do not need you to participate. And that often works. And people just, people stand to the side. There are some people whose ego is so strong that they will not get out of the way. So there are some people who cannot be hypnotized. Not very many, but there are some. And Dolores Cannon said in her practice, she estimated somewhere around 10% of the people couldn't or refused to be hypnotized because their ego did not want to relinquish control.
Yes.
And that's unfortunate, because some of those people were so keen to come and contact their higher self, and it's sort of like it's a disappointment, but you can't really tell. People who are very left-brained are harder to hypnotize than the right-brained people. Left brain is judgment, analysis, mathematics, science, and the right brain is creativity, and artists and painters and so on do well mostly in the right side. But but you can't tell when you're talking to someone. You can't really tell initially which side of the brain they spend most of their time on. But hopefully, people come with the right brain in the forefront, and that makes it so much easier for me.
Well, I wanted to really touch on a point very quickly, because I know other people that do forms of the type of work that you do, not QHHT, and I think it's very powerful with the level that it works with, at the theta level, with the subconscious, if you will. But I know this is possible. Like, I have a friend actually that is a light worker and going through some serious neurological surgery they're going to need on their neck, and they've just been told, the doctor said they can't do anything. And I've said this to so many people, why wouldn't you try something like what you do? Because you know what, we're not guaranteeing a cure, but for a little bit of your time and a little bit of an investment, imagine if you could avoid a whole surgery. Because I've said, like, I've had back surgery, I've failed back surgery. I can't go back to be a nurse. I have my license. I wasn't meant to be a nurse for the rest of my life anyways, obviously, with what I'm doing. But my whole point is, if you don't have to have surgery, why would you? Because once it's cut, I keep telling people, it will never go back to what it was with what God, your creator, source, whatever your belief is, you were given naturally, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. And yet you have to be, you're dead right. For somebody who's facing surgery, what do you have to lose by doing this? I mean, you 4 or 5 hours out of your day. If it doesn't work, you're no worse off.
Exactly.
If it does work, then you avoid surgery. So I entirely agree with you.
I do too. Now we're almost, I knew 2 hours. I knew from watching some of your interviews, and I try not to do an interview the same as everybody else. And I understand everybody has a different style, but and I've been on many shows too, and people just ask you to read down a list. I wanted to see where this conversation was going to go, but I want to touch on your books very quickly, especially your new one that you have out. So what kind of messages does it have for humanity? Because again, we touched on this in the first part of the show. We've got this collective of fear, anxiety, divisiveness. Like, I'm guessing there's probably a lot of messages in there to help humanity kind of come together as a whole. Or I'd love to hear, what's going on with that. Like, what's in there for people?
The messages haven't changed very much. They've been the same. But in my 5th book, I describe a scene where I'm on the spirit side, and I got to sit in on an orientation class for new souls who haven't been to Earth before. So it was Albert and Sophia, the chair of the Council of Wise Ones, giving this course. It was like in the stadium, and these souls had never been to Earth before. They were just giving them the lay of the land, to making sure they understood what's involved in an incarnation on Earth. And so there's a lot of, they go through the start of the universe and the source, and they go all the way through all the things that have happened and where they are, and it's really a good, in a way, it's a bit of a summation of some of the messages in all my other books. It's sort of all there in one shell, and it's very interesting. The humor is alive and well on the spirit side. I don't know if people realize that, but there's lots of humor. Yeah, lots of humor.
Excuse me.
One of the funny things was, at the beginning of the class, Sophia says to them, "So you want to incarnate on Earth?" She says, "Well, my first advice to you is run like hell."
Yes.
Don't even bother. But she was facetious. Anyway, it's really a good sort of discussion of the cycle of reincarnation, formation of the universe, why we're here, what happens after, what happens when we die, and then there's a couple of guest appearances. What I call guest appearances. One was by Jesus. Another one was by Gaia, the consciousness of Mother Earth.
Love Gaia. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Gaia and I had a couple of conversations with Gaia, and it really surprised me, because I just thought that our planet was inert molecules. Our planet has consciousness, and she had a very interesting message, and you've probably heard this as well. Her message was that she loves all of her creatures on her planet dearly, everyone, including humans, but she's very upset with humans and the pollution they've been causing dear old Mother Earth. And she said that's very upsetting to her. It causes problems with her other creatures, causes problems with the planet, the atmosphere, everything else. She says we really need to curtail our pollution or it will end badly for us. And so we really have to, and we've been getting better at it, but we're still long ways to go. She says we really need to do that. And she says until we get the message, the natural disasters on our planet, which people attribute to climate change, like more intense hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, wildfires, and so on. She says those are going to increase over time until we get our act together. And so it's sort of like a warning shot across our bow. If you don't like all these natural disasters coming, and they're more intense and they're more frequent, if you don't like that, then change your ways, humans. And what she really wants to do is to have us back to the point in time before we polluted, where all of her creatures, including humans, were in a balanced ecosystem. Back in the caveman days, all we did was burn some fire and a little bit of smoke, but we didn't do much damage. After the Industrial Revolution, our ability to pollute increased exponentially, and we're still doing it. And so she says, we got to change that.
I love it. I love Gaia. So I have 2 videos I share quite a bit on my YouTube channel. One is how to grid and ground, and it's connecting with Gaia. And I said it takes longer to explain than it does to do every morning. And again, like I said earlier, I believe human beings are meant to live in balance, just as everything else on this planet is created, right? And I teach people, whether you want to look at it as a crystal in the middle of the earth, but I my favorite is to imagine Gaia at the center of the earth, and I picture love, basically, because I teach people how to create their own thing that works for them. Because I hate when I've watched a video, a how-to, and then the video is off, and then you go, what was step 7 again? What was I supposed to do? This way, if you create it yourself, you know what you're doing. But I love to almost, like, if you will, for myself, picture love, because I feel love's the most powerful emotion we have. And then I picture it all spiraling down little tree roots, but it's almost ending in an electrical cord, and you plug into Gaia's heart chakra, and then she sends you what she has to help alchemize, right? Like, and I'd use this for people like if we're experiencing stress or lower vibrational emotions, because it's just energy. Right. And then the other one actually is, I call it a love shield, because, for those that are sensitive, I'm one of those. I don't like to come from a place of fear, because I don't think we need to come from a place of fear. But sometimes we do need to shield ourselves from other people's energies. So those are 2 I share quite a bit. But I'm sorry, I got off track, but I get quite excited about Gaia. You and I are on the same wavelength with a lot of stuff, and I knew we would be. So this book, like you said, that's what I wanted to ask you. New souls, where do they come from, and how is it decided when a new soul, I guess they decide if they're going to incarnate onto this planet, right? But where do they come from, or why do we have them?
Well, new souls are basically individual aspects of the source. And I was taken on one of my trips to sort of the central sun, one of the focal points of the source, where I could see basically sparks of light coming out, spinning out from the sun. Those are new souls. They're created constantly. So new souls comes out, and their mission is to explore the universe, explore all the planets, explore everything. And one of the things that really necessary to really fully understand, the universe and life forms, is to incarnate on the physical plane into a soul, or into a body rather. And he explained it. He said, souls in the spirit side can acquire knowledge. They can watch what's going on say, planet Earth. They can see what humans are doing, but it's book learning. So if you want to really know what it's like to be a human, to experience negative emotions and other stuff that we have on planet Earth, you incarnate into a human body, and then you get it firsthand. And so that's why souls choose to go incarnate on the physical plane to learn something. And we don't have to. It's, as I said, it's entirely our choice. We can stay in spirit. We can explore the universe as spirits, but we don't get that hands-on experience. And that's why we say, okay, well, I'm going to jump into a human on planet Earth, and I'm going to see what it's like, to see if I can overcome the challenges that we're going to face there. It's a testing of my mettle. Am I strong enough? Am I brave enough to go ahead and go through this life? And some souls, they choose to go to other planets, easier lives, so nobody makes us come here. But a lot of the people who incarnate on Earth have been on many different life forms. And so they're sort of saying, like, okay, I've sort of conquered those ones. Now I'm going to try the tough one, which is a human on planet Earth. That's why it's a tough school. So it's chances are you and I have both been incarnated on other planets. And it's interesting that the Council of Wise Ones says that they are recruiting advanced souls from other planets who haven't been to Earth before to come and incarnate on our planet to help us. And I think I mentioned that already.
Yes.
And one of the things that they can do is that if you've never incarnated on planet Earth before, is that before you incarnate, you can get imprinted with memories of other souls so that you have some basis for understanding what planet Earth is like. You can actually be imprinted. And if you had a number of lives on planet Earth before, you don't need to because you have all that experience already.
Right.
New souls sometimes will jump in with an imprint so that they're not totally floundering and totally wondering what's going on. Yeah. And a lot of that is happening. And then there's also the walk-in souls. I don't know if you...
Thank you, because I asked you about that and then we got off on another topic. Yes, because I have, and I get a lot of questions from people as well as even fellow light workers. Like I have one friend that he believes he was a walk-in. He's completely different than when he ended up, I think, with pneumonia, almost died, had a couple near-death experiences, has no previous memories. He was a bit overweight before this happened. He wanted to be a comedian and a musician. He is completely different now, super thin, nothing about performing, anything. But go ahead, sorry.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Walk-in souls really do happen. It doesn't happen that often. Typically, a soul will jump into, say, a human baby at birth and then continue on until death. But sometimes the soul, hits an exit point partway through their life, and they've learned whatever they want to learn. They say, "Okay, it's time to leave." There'll be another soul who will say, "Hold it! Don't let that body die, because I want to take over that body. I don't need to go from birth all the way through school up to the 50-year-old position. I want to jump in and finish that life and learn my lessons from there on." And so it's like an exchange agreement. The old soul says, "Fine, I'm gone." New soul comes in. It often happens in a traumatic event, like an accident, your death experience, and a lot of people will notice a change of personality.
Yeah,
as you mentioned, a change of personality, and people will think, "Well, what's going on? Maybe something, they got hit on the head in this accident. Something changed them. Could be a new soul has come in." And that's why there's a change of personality. But it does happen. And it actually makes sense. It's sort of like, why get rid of this good human body when somebody else can jump in and take over? And so that's what walk-in souls do. And it does happen quite often. I don't think I've had a walk-in, as far as I know. I'm probably one of those that slogged it through from birth until where I am now, which is very common. But it's an interesting concept. And it's something that we could consider actually when we get back to the spirit side. Do we want our next incarnation? Do we want to start from a baby, or do we want to walk in on somebody else? Nice choice to have.
Well, and that's what it's all about, is choice, right? Like, and again, we're going to run out of time. I knew when you said, you fight 2-hour interviews long, I thought, no, we'll have lots to talk about, but let's see how you feel, because it's all about choice. Like when you'd mentioned this before, just briefly, we went off on a different topic. I get a lot of people contacting me, they've had a beloved pet or partner or what have you pass, and then they hate God and they blame God for it. And I'm thinking of one in particular, and it was her dog. And this was her child to her. And, she was just beyond devastated. She hated God. She hated life. And it was a very difficult conversation to navigate, with the fact that I just asked for her guides to come in before and mine to help with this, and really word it very gently that God had nothing to do with this, sweetheart. And, our pets are here. I believe they're guides of our own in animal form. And I believe you always say, we don't get the pet you want, you get the pet you need. And we do. And unfortunately, they don't live as long as we do, but there's a purpose, right? And to explain that this was the pet's decision. They knew when it was time to pass. I know you're nodding, so go ahead, add something.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Animals do have souls too, just like ours.
Absolutely.
In fact, you and I may have had previous lives on Earth in an animal that we don't remember. And to a lot of people, it's like a horrific thought. Like, I don't want to be an animal when I leave here. I don't want to go back to be a snake or a rat. Well, the fact is you have a choice. And if you've been in an animal before and you're now on a human, you're probably not going to go back to the animal life because their lives are very simple. It's actually a good way to get your feet wet on the earth plane is into an animal because their lives are very simple. They don't have to worry about mortgage payments or saving for retirement or putting their kids through college. They don't have any of that. All they have to worry about is where can I get my next meal and how do I avoid being eaten by a fox? You know, human lives are much more complex. So the chances of somebody going back to an animal are very slim. But everyone's pets, people who missed their pets who died, and that we lost our little dog like 3 years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's very sad, but I know that she will be there as part of my welcoming party when I transition over. In fact, in the preview of my welcoming party, when I first went to the spirit side, my first little dog, Oscar, he was part of the group, and he comes running out to greet me, you know. And so people will see their pets again, and the souls who were their pets will appear in the form of their pets that the people remember, so they recognize it. But it was very interesting because in my first discussion with Albert, and I said to him, "Do animals have souls?" He said, "You need only look into the eyes of your little dog."
Yes.
And that was right. I mean, they do. And in fact, after our most recent dog passed away, she gave me signs. I mean, I was sitting there all alone in the house one day, and I heard the pitter patter of her feet on the hardwood floor. But of course, she wasn't there. But she was just saying, "Hi, I'm okay. Don't worry about me." You know. And she.
I have pictures. There is a girl I was talking to. It was quite a few years ago, and we were on Skype. And she was in bed. She had quite a few health issues. And as we're talking on video, I said, "Did you used to have a cat that laid on the pillow right beside you there?" "Oh, yeah, that was my Boo." She goes, "Boo, I just adored him. He passed away." I said, "Well, I hate to tell you." "Well, I don't hate to tell you. I'm going to tell you. He's sitting right there. He's flicking his tail. He just looked at you. He's grooming himself." I've got goosebumps again. I took pictures of it. So she has the pictures. I could ask her for them. No, I couldn't see it because it was on Skype, right? And I wasn't recording it. It was just like a general conversation. But they do come back. And we've had many pets do the same thing. Yes, I hear you.
Yeah, and that's very comforting to me. Anybody who's had a pet, you know, dog, cat, or iguana or whatever. It's nice to know that when they pass, they've gone back to the spirit side, and you will see them again. And it's really very comforting because they become part of the family. People fall in love with their pets.
They are your family. Yeah, they are. When you said about animals very quickly, that we're almost out of time. I hope you'll come back, Garnet, because I could talk to you for hours, and I've really enjoyed this. So I hope you will come back.
I will come back, absolutely.
I just wanted to add one thing. When you said about coming back with animals, and I've listened to quite a few Dolores Cannon interviews, and she's talked about people that came back actually as air in one of their lifetimes and the formation of Earth, and super fascinating. But my own eldest son, I have two boys. I have one with severe autism. He was popping up in the background. I think he thought I was done, but people know who he is. He's popped up before, Justin. But my eldest, I've never pushed spirituality on my children, but because it happened quite early in their lives, I could see signs in my own children. Like both my boys can communicate with animals. My eldest has actually taught me quite a bit about it. But he had a friend whose mom kind of did what I do. And she took them through almost like, I think she called it a soul journey. She was more like a shamanistic practitioner. And my son clearly remembers his life as a wolf. He told me the whole thing. He had to be about probably 14. And I didn't know he was doing it at the time. He came home and then told me about it. I didn't have a problem with it. And I thought it was so fascinating because I've run into people over the years that say, "No, we can't cross species. We can't do this." How do you know we can't cross species? How do you know we can't? I believe totally about this. So I'm so glad you mentioned that yes, we have had lives as animals, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I've had a lot of actually clients in the QHHT sessions when they've regressed. They've gone to a life as an animal on Earth, or sometimes a foreign life on a different planet. Like one person was a green blob, another person was a flying animal on a planet where all the animals flew. Another one was a little fairy. I'm not sure which planet it was, but she was a fairy with wings. She had a magic wand, and so it's really quite incredible, you know, because these people are reliving a past life in a different life form, which really expands our horizons to know that we're not just humans and that other animals, have different souls or whatever. No, it's all one and the same, and we're all part of the big cycle of reincarnation.
I am so glad that we did this together. That's why I did not want to reschedule this. I didn't talk today, so I'd have a voice, and I've been so looking forward to this. Like I said, I really hope you will come back on. I know my listeners are going to love this. The only bad thing about a pre-recording, when we're live, the chat, we can see the chat, because I have a lot of people that show up that have questions, and I'm going to try and figure out a way. There supposedly isn't, but that when I do run this live, I will let you know when we run this live. And I don't know if we can do it on Facebook or something. I will figure it out, because I know there are going to be so many questions and comments. So where can people get a hold of you? I want them to buy your books, because these are like manuals to help you navigate what the heck we're going through here on Earth, I feel, anyways, from what we've talked about.
The best place is my website, which is garnetschulhauser.com. That's my book website. I also have one for QHHT, which is the same, my name with QHHT at the end. So on my book website, you can read about my books. You can read excerpts. You can there's buy links that on one side of it where you can just click on and go to Amazon, get right to where all my books are for sale.
Okay.
I record all the radio shows I do. Like when I get the recording for this, I post them on my website and on my YouTube channel, so people can go back, and if they miss the show,
Thank you.
And my email is on there. If people want to send a comment or a question, please do so. It's contact@garnetschulhauser.com. My name is hard to remember. If you Google Dancing on a Stamp or any of my book titles, you can get to my website. And so that's a good place to contact me. I strive to read and reply to all of my emails. And so if they have a question or comment, fire away.
I love it. And I want to remind people too, and I didn't have a chance to tell Garnet this, my show and all the shows on this network, we are covered, the archives or the replays, anywhere where talk radio or podcasts are carried. So iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Spotify, Podbean. I mean, one time I think I was looking up an app for something else. I was a guest on a show, and I was looking for something, and one of my interviews was on there. Like, I think we are everywhere you can find us. So I want to thank you again for being here. I want to remind people, if you want to get a hold of me to book a reading, healing session, I do mentoring sessions. You can get a hold of me on facebook.com/The Angel Rock. I have 2 groups on that Facebook well, not page, but on Facebook, Paranormal University for all things paranormal. And then we have the Angel Rocker Tribe for many of the things that Garnet and I talked about tonight. And I will be back again next Monday. Don't forget, new time. It started actually last week, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, Garnet, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. I look forward to having you back on again.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed this. It's very delightful. You're a great host, and I absolutely will come back again.
I can't wait, because I was so excited to have you on here. So I send you all good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be, and we'll see you next